Labour Party Christchurch Central South Branch, Peter Tuffley. They? No, they're not coming. I've put them off to another day. Sorry, for those that are following this, we had Christchurch and Canterbury Tourism, but I asked them to come and submit on another day because I felt that their submission would fit more appropriately with some of the other submissions that we're receiving rather than today, which is more the business associations, the unions and the political parties. Thank you. And then the community boards at 4 o'clock. Peter.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. We believe that the asset sell-off that the draft plan proposes will, in all probability, be irrevocable. We don't think that once gone, possession of the assets that have been sold off and enjoyment of the benefits the community currently derives from them will ever be a realistic possibility. We also believe that it will represent an embracing of the key government's privatisation agenda, and that will be a big step down a dangerously slippery slope. We have a government that long before the 4th of September 2010 declared that it would like to see Christchurch City Council sell off its commercial assets. We have a council which a government which after this council went through the share and idea consultation process and produced a recovery plan that was realistic in terms of the council's financial situation, then imposed a so-called blueprint that involved far greater expenditure than the previous council had deemed prudent. And in our view, that move and the ensuing cost-sharing agreement was deliberately aimed at driving the council towards a financial position in which asset sales would appear to be a tempting alternative to massive rate increases. The danger that the council will face if it yields to that temptation and abandons the position it has held hitherto on asset sales is that it will have forfeited any principled grounds for resistance should the government subsequently seek to pressure or compel the council to sell off its remaining unsold assets. For example, under the threat of dismissing the elected council and appointing commissioners, as was done with ECAM. We wouldn't be surprised to see that, given the government's record of bullying dictatorship over Canterbury and Christchurch. Either you accept the principle of privatisation or you don't, just as there's no such thing as being just a little bit pregnant. And if the council does that, and the government then says, you've agreed to privatisation in principle, now sell the lot, the council will have thrown away any moral authority for resistance to such a demand. Selling off shares in community-owned assets will be an open invitation to this government to compel the council to carry out a forced fire sale. And as for the notion of selling shares only to strategic partners who have their community's long-term interests at heart, well, the point you previously made about Orion and Selwyn Council is well taken, but whichever corporate entities, be they council or a company, get their hands on the shares, their first duty will be to their shareholders or to their stakeholders, or ratepayers, not to the community of Christchurch. Sorry, Madam Mayor, but the tooth fairy doesn't exist, and the council should not be trying to persuade the community that it does. In our view, a decision to start selling off community-owned commercial assets will not only be irrevocable, it will be very dangerous. So we would urge those councillors who have hitherto supported the proposed asset sell-off to reflect very carefully and ask themselves whether all alternatives have truly been exhausted, which in our view they have not. There are, we submit, more possible scenarios than the 4 set out here on page 27 of the consultation document, and they involve making reductions in the amount proposed to be spent in the 10 years covered by the draft plan. We've outlined a number of alternatives in our original submission, but they would boil down to cancellation or deferral. For a start, reduce the proposed capital expenditure on the government's wish list of projects it has sought to impose on us without any public consultation. The government's announcement today of a up to two-year deferral of so-called anchor projects worth $1 billion gives an opportunity to do just that, and correspondingly should reduce the shortfall the asset sell-off has been touted as being required to cover. And add to that the approximately 500 million, or is it 450 million, by which we are reliably informed that the council is currently underspent, and we're already a good way further towards eradicating the shortfall, and with it any justification for the asset sell-off, and also the need for rate increases higher than those already proposed. Not only do capital projects notoriously take longer to complete than foreseen, which in our view further strengthens the case for reducing the capital expenditure proposed for the next 10 years, we would suggest that some other proposed projects, in addition to those already mentioned, could also be sensibly pruned, such as the idea of a Heathcote-Avon estuary tidal barrier, for example. On the operating side too, we are pretty sure that opportunities for savings through smarter spending could be found in plenty, given the will to search for them. The irrevocable nature of the proposed asset sales and the consequent danger of exposure to government pressure for further sell-offs combine, in our view, to make this a potentially fateful and perilous year in our city's history, and we urge the council to reconsider. Thank you.
Thanks, Peter. I'm just kind of going to make the comment, though, that, I mean, I agree with you entirely about the estuary tidal barrier. Unfortunately, we didn't put any money on the budget to do it. So taking it off the agenda doesn't take any money off the budget. But I thought I would just pick up on one thing. Do you know what the difference was in terms of the costs that were in the council's kind of share an idea draft central city plan, the amount of money they plan to spend, and the amount they're now required to spend under the cost share agreement?
I don't recall the exact difference. It was commented on at the time, I believe, but however much or however little it was generally reported as involving more expenditure than share an idea.
Well, I mean, I'll just give one example that I'm aware of, and that is that the amount that was put aside for the Metro Sports facility was, in terms of the council's cap contribution, was the amount that had been put on the budget for that facility under the Central City Recovery Plan draft. So, you know, what we might do is get council staff to actually go through the two plans and actually show the public, you know, what that difference is. Because I think you're right, there are some elements of the difference that are hidden because of other decisions that were made. You know, for example, I've never really quite understood why the council decided to hand over approximately $15 million, probably $8 million net, worth of residential red zone land to the Crown for nothing in return. So there are elements of the two that don't stack up, but there are also things that I think people have an assumption that the figure was for some, you know, business case reason, but in fact was just to mirror the amount that the council put on the plan. Phil.
Thanks, Peter. Can I just comment about first about the estuary tidal barrier? That was really it's really only a pre-feasibility study which is being done. There's a lot of people that have asked about this, and that report would come to the Infrastructure, Transport and Environment Committee before any full exploration or feasibility study was done. I just wanted to ask you, Peter, too, because you referred to potential reduction in spending by council, and I know you have another hat regarding the Residents Association of Beckenham. But if, for example, it was shown that the Christchurch South Library was actually quite safe and while it is being monitored, would you consider, I just wonder if you consider extending out the time when, in fact, that could be rebuilt in the future?
Absolutely, Madam Mayor. Absolutely. That would be, in our view, a prime, and in the view of whichever other hat I have to wear to say in subsequent presentations, that would be a prime target for reduction. It's working at present. It's to every appearance it's safe as it is, and to close it down in the immediate future and embark on repairs would not only be, in our view, premature expenditure, but would also deprive the local community of a facility which is much needed in these distressing times.
Totally agree. Glenn.
Thank you, Peter. Just in your third to last paragraph there, you note the, I think, an emerging picture of both Crown and Council together. We've got talk now of deferral from the Crown and underspend by the Council. Is it then your conclusion that there is a sense in which this financial shortfall is actually beginning to take care of itself?
1.2 billion.
Well, it's potentially getting smaller. Whether to what extent it will take care of itself, we'll sort of need to for today's dust to settle and a bit more cool analysis to take part. But it does seem to be trending in that direction.
Yanni.
It was interesting to give you the cost of the anchor projects imposed on by the Crown through the blueprint versus what Council had.
Can I
So
look? Excuse me.
800 million
Can I just
to 2
interrupt?
billion.
Can I just interrupt and say that I'm going to ask for a full set of breakdown with the two. I don't want to spend question time. The 10 minutes is up. I don't want question time with you providing us with your view of the answer.
It's not view, it's factual.
No.
But can I just make sure when it comes back that we get the total cost of the Central City anchor projects? Because it is 1.2 billion. It is the gap that we're facing.
No, it's not the gap that we're facing. I'm sorry, look, I don't actually want to use the submission process as an opportunity for people, excuse me, Yanni, I think it's a matter of respect that we have a submitter here, and it was an opportunity to ask him a question, not make a statement. Is there anyone, because it's not fair on Mr. Tuffley. Vicky, would you like to ask a question?
In terms of the decisions of the previous council, does the decision to invest 350 million with a contingent liability of 650 million into Enable, when the government was going to put that here anyway, strike you as odd?
Sorry, Madam Mayor, I didn't quite hear all of Councillor Buck's question. Could you?
Yeah, no. She's surprisingly for Vicky, she's actually got quite a quiet voice when she asks questions.
Just in terms of owning assets and trying to keep them, the difficulty of actually putting the debt into the companies was because of the liability that we have for Enable. Does it strike you as an unusual decision that the previous council made post-earthquake to invest 350 million with a contingent liability of 650 million into the ultra-fast broadband Enable at a time when they were post-earthquake faced with major repairs?
It does strike me as strange. I've been resisting the temptation to say anything uncomplimentary about the previous council, but yes, it does.
I think a number of us feel that. But, right, well, thank you very much, Peter. Great to see you, and we really appreciate you making the effort to come along and submit to us.
Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, and could we have